Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, sending in the Guard. The White House arming the National Guard as it patrols the nation's capital, despite reports that crime is down. And now the president is setting his sights on other cities like Chicago.
Look, Chicago, everybody knows how bad it is. Everybody standing there knows. We know. You don't have to be doing any studies. They should be saying, please come in.
I'm Alex Perez in Chicago. I just talked to Illinois Governor Pritzker. I'll tell you why he says he will fight to keep the National Guard off the streets of Chicago.
The man mistakenly deported from the U.S. to a mega prison in El Salvador, brought back to the U.S. last week and then taken into custody by ICE this morning under threat of deportation to Uganda, now at the center of a legal battle again. A federal judge says the Trump administration is absolutely forbidden from removing Abrego Garcia from the U.S. Congressman Glenn Ivey met with Abrego Garcia today and talks to us about what's next. Record-breaking heat fuels multiple wildfires in the West, destroying homes and forcing evacuations of thousands, as 10 million people are on alert from California to Washington state. This as flood watches go into effect from the West Coast to the Midwest. We'll show you where the wild weather is headed next. A massive explosion in a neighborhood outside of St. Louis, leveling multiple homes. A search and rescue team on the hunt for victims. What's caused this powerful blast? And the American Academy of Family Physicians says 7 out of 10 kids are not getting enough sleep. How do you make sure your children are getting the sleep they need in time for the new school year?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with the president's mobilization of armed troops. More than 2,000 members of the National Guard are now patrolling the nation's capital, some of them armed. From national monuments to D.C. train stations, it's all part of what the president calls a crackdown on crime. And now he wants to expand the effort to other American cities, in particular those run by Democrats. And he's setting his sights on Chicago next. The president calling the city a killing field, though Chicago police report that homicide is actually down in recent years. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responded directly to the president today, calling it an attack on blue states and his political rivals.
Instead, I say, Mr. President, do not come to Chicago. You are neither wanted here nor needed here.
The governor insisting troops on the streets in Chicago would be an unprecedented and illegal overreach as more boots hit the ground in D.C. We have team coverage of it all tonight, including our Alex Perez's extensive interview with Illinois Governor Pritzker. But first, here's Rachel Scott at the White House. Rachel?
Stephanie, the National Guard still out on the streets here in Washington, D.C., but today the president says he has plans to possibly expand it to other cities.
Tonight, 2,200 National Guard troops patrolling the streets of the nation's capital. Commuters seeing them in train stations and stationed outside national monuments. And now, those troops are armed.
They're armed, capable of defending themselves and others if need be, supporting law enforcement.
Right now, the Guard is not deployed to Washington's most high-crime areas, stationed instead around tourist attractions and the metro. Local officials insist crime was already falling in D.C. Homicide down 32% last year after hitting a 20-year high the year before. But the president insisting that's not good enough, now setting his sights on other cities.
Look, Chicago, everybody knows how bad it is. They should be saying, please come in.
Homicide in Chicago is down 50% over 4 years after surging dramatically during the pandemic. Tonight, the Democratic governor of Illinois firing back.
This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue city, in a blue state, to try and intimidate his political rivals.
Today, I asked the president if he would send National Guard troops into red states too. The cities with the 2 highest homicide rates, St. Louis and New Orleans, though run by Democrats, are both in states with Republican governors.
We've talked a lot about Democratic-run cities and states. Yeah. Would you also consider sending the National Guard into red states and red cities that are also seeing high crime?
Sure, but there aren't that many of them. If you look at the top 25 cities that for crime. Just about every one of those cities is run by Democrats.
And Rachel Scott joins us now. Rachel, the president also has plans for changes at the Department of Defense. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, Stephanie. So the president wants to change the name of the Department of Defense to become the Department of War. And the reasoning behind this, he says that it sounds stronger to be the Department of War. He says that the Department of Defense sounds like the United States is a defender and that the United States should be on offense. The president does insist that he does not need congressional approval or authority to do this. He thinks that he has the authority, but changing the name of a federal agency would require going through Congress, since Congress authorizes the creation of those agencies, Stephanie.
All right, we will see if that happens. Thank you so much, Rachel. Our Alex Perez spent time today with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on the streets of Chicago and on the Chicago River. The governor is saying he's not yet heard from the president or Defense Secretary Hegseth on the potential deployment of National Guard or federal military personnel around the city. But that's not stopping him from preparing for a fight in court. Alex Perez is in Chicago, where he just spoke to the governor. Alex, what did he tell you?
Yeah, Stephanie, you know, President Trump has been threatening to deploy National Guardsmen here on the streets of Chicago for weeks now. I spoke with the governor here of Illinois just a short time ago, and he said he will do whatever he can to stop that from happening. Governor, today in the Oval Office, the president mentioned your name several times. He blamed you for crime in Chicago, said this is all your fault. Your response to that?
Well, appreciate his recognizing that Chicago actually has had a drop in crime significantly, in fact, in halves in the last 4 years. And we've had a murder rate that's dropped by 37% just in the last year. We're very pleased about the progress that we're making. I know that I live rent-free in the president's head, and I wish he would spend some time in Chicago so that he could see what a lovely city we have.
Governor, quick follow-up. What do you do if the National Guard is activated and comes here? Can you take preemptive action? What happens?
Look, first thing we're going to do is take him to court because it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. Frankly, it's un-American to send troops into an American city the way that he wants to fight crime. There is literally a law in the books that says he's not allowed to do that. So we're going to stand against that. We're going to make sure that he's held accountable for that. And most importantly, he should know that there is no emergency in the city of Chicago. I think you can see what a lovely place this is. I just walked on the lakefront this morning and walked to dinner last night with my wife. Yes, like other major cities across the United States, there is crime. But indeed, it is dropping precipitously in the city of Chicago, and it's in part because of the work that we're doing at the local level. If he wasn't taking away funding for police, if he wasn't taking away funding for fighting crime, things would be even easier. But unfortunately, he is creating a challenge for all of us and defunding police.
Do you think this is punishment for being a sanctuary city?
Well, let me be clear. The President of the United States doesn't even understand what that term means. And I'm very pleased that we have a safe city that is protective of all of our residents, the people who are following the law, people who are paying their taxes, people that are our friends and our neighbors. If he is to live up to his promise, what he ought to be doing is allowing us to prosecute people who actually commit crimes. And if they are undocumented, we would keep them in prison for whatever term they are committed to, and then deport them. We've asked for that. That doesn't seem to be what this president wants to do. He just wants to pick people up off the streets without warrants and toss them out of the country. Some of them even have been U.S. citizens.
Governor, what's your concern if the National Guard were to be federalized and on the streets of Chicago? What is your concern?
Well, my deep concern is that they're going to cause people to want to protest. They're going to create turmoil where there is none. We've got a city that's peaceful. We have challenges like other big cities, but ours are not as big as the challenges in red cities and in red states. So the problem is Donald Trump is causing a problem because he is an authoritarian, and he wants to militarize our cities for his own power grab.
Is there anything the federal government could do to help that you would welcome?
Oh my gosh, well, we work with the federal government all the time, the ATF, the FBI. We have task forces that our state police and our local Chicago police are engaged with them in, and they've been very effective. Look at how we brought crime down working together with them and at the local level. So they ought to continue to fund the programs that we've been using and that have been working instead of defunding the police.
The president seems to be targeting 4 cities, all led by black mayors. Is that a coincidence, you think, or?
You know, I don't want to accuse him of anything, but I think there's some evidence now that he is targeting places that with people that he doesn't respect, doesn't like, and that he's doing it simply purely for political purposes, and because ultimately what he wants to do is shut down these cities, militarize them, and make sure that there are no elections going forward.
National Guard is trained to work in war zones. They're not trained to deal like a civilian police force. Are you concerned about that?
I am deeply concerned about that. Our National Guard are extraordinarily well trained. They are trained to go to war, and they have done so admirably on behalf of the United States and the people of Illinois abroad. But they're not trained to go into American cities and police them. And a great deal of respect for them, are members of the National Guard, but they shouldn't be sent into their to cities to police or attack citizens of the United States in the borders of the United States.
Would you seek an injunction if this happens?
We are in fact prepared to go to court if they take any action that we think is a violation of the Constitution or the law.
Thank you, Governor.
Appreciate you
very much.
Alex, a very insightful and extensive interview there with the governor. And as you know, he held a press conference. What else did he say about the president and the possibility of National Guardsmen there in Chicago?
Well, Stephanie, the governor here was flanked by the mayor of the city of Chicago, members of Congress from Illinois, and dozens of community leaders from here in Chicago as well, all sort of hammering home the same point, that they don't see this being about crime. They see this as the president having an axe to grind against blue cities, blue states, Democratic governors and Democratic leaders. They say if the president wanted to help with crime in the area, he would be funding and investing programs that help prevent violence rather than cutting some of those programs. And this group of people that joined the governor here, Stephanie, all made it very clear that they do not want to see the National Guard here on the streets of Chicago because they fear that presence might actually lead to protests that could then become violent and create more chaos here in the city. They say the answer is to keep the National Guard away and continue to do what the city has done that has brought them a 30% decrease this year, they say, in violent crime so far, and they believe that will continue to drop as the year continues to move forward if they just keep doing what they are doing. They see this this interaction from the president as something that would just interrupt the current program that's happening right now that's helping to deter crime, Stephanie. So they say they will do whatever they can to stop that National Guard from ending up here on the streets of Chicago. Stephanie?
We'll definitely see how this all plays out. And in your conversation with the governor, you brought up Chicago's mayor, who's also stepping in on this, calling on the White House to release funding for Chicago that's being held up. We'll see how that plays out as well. Alex Perez for us tonight in Chicago. Thank you so much for that insightful conversation. In the West tonight, they are fighting extreme heat and fleeing dangerous wildfires. The picket fire in Napa, California's wine country, is threatening homes and properties. And in Central Oregon, the flat fire exploding in size, scorching more than 30 square miles. Meteorologist Lee Goldberg has the forecast for us in just a moment. But first, ABC's Trevor Ault has the latest from California.
Tonight, record-breaking heat fueling multiple wildfires in the west, destroying homes and forcing thousands to flee. North of San Francisco in Napa County, a massive days-long battle to keep the picket fire away from neighborhoods. Choppers making daring nighttime assaults on the flames, and with the terrain there extremely rugged and remote. This footage from Cal Fire showing a helicopter attack crew flying into an area impossible to reach on foot. That fire still burning out of control, now more than 10 square miles. Up in Oregon, the flat fire has destroyed multiple buildings southeast of Portland, including at least 4 homes, more than 30 square miles charred since Thursday. The Pacific Northwest sweltering. This weekend, officials in at least 2 Oregon counties reporting heat-related deaths. In the desert Southwest, monsoon storms threatening to spark new lightning-fueled fires. In Nevada's Black Rock Desert, a powerful overnight dust storm sending festival goers scrambling for cover at Burning Man. Several tents damaged, but no one was hurt.
Trevor Alt joins us now from LA. And Trevor, do we know the cause of either of these fires?
Well, not so far, Steph. The cause of both the Picket Fire and the Flat Fire are under investigation. But for now, that investigation is going to be on hold because the focus is on containing these fires, and thousands of firefighters have been dispatched to try to reel them in. Stephanie?
So many firefighters trying to help. Thank you so much, Trevor. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg of our New York station. Lee, you're tracking not only the heat and fire alerts, but also a major cool down in the eastern half of the country.
Yes, Stephanie, what goes up must come down. Now, we still have that hot corner of the country in the Pacific Northwest. It's one more day of that. It'll be in the 90s, some triple digits. There are heat alerts from California all the way to Washington. And we'll start to see some relief as we go into midweek. But tomorrow, the fire danger is still high. We'll be dropping to the 80s, even into the 70s. From, let's say, Seattle to Boise will be close to that 80-degree mark. Still rather hot in Medford, but we're coming off our peaks for sure. What's helping to really prompt this cool down is the monsoonal flow in the west. There are flood watches, California, Colorado, all the way to Oklahoma. In these areas of yellow, see some rainfall rates of 2 inches an hour, so some flooding possible. Meanwhile, eastern two-thirds of the country, there's this cool down where we're skipping to September levels, some 10 to 20 degrees below average. Lots of highs in the 70s from the southern plains all the way to the Great Lakes, and that's stretching to the East Coast. And in fact, that should last right through the holiday weekend. Stephanie?
Lots to watch. All right, Lee, thanks so much. President Trump has just fired Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook after promising he would do so if she didn't resign. In a letter posted on Truth Social, he said that he is firing Cook because of allegations that she committed mortgage fraud. It also comes as Trump and his top advisors have launched a pressure campaign on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. Cook was appointed by President Biden and was set to serve in the role until 2038. She is the first black woman in history to serve on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Now to the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. 3 days after he was released from custody, he's now back in ICE custody tonight, and the administration says they will deport him to Uganda. But late today, a judge stepped in. Here's Pierre Thomas with the latest details.
Just 3 days after he was released from federal custody, Kilmar Abrego Garcia arrested again by ICE officers when he arrived at his scheduled immigration appointment in Baltimore. And tonight, the Department of Homeland Security says he's being processed for deportation to Uganda.
We are all Kilmar!
Abrego Garcia, who was returned to the U.S. after being wrongfully deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador, today surrounded by supporters. Even though injustice is hitting us hard, he said, we do not lose faith. He's facing criminal charges filed after his deportation to El Salvador became the focus of an international controversy.
He's currently charged with human smuggling, including children. The guy needs to be in prison.
Abrego Garcia has pleaded not guilty, but his attorneys say the administration offered him a deal. If he changed his plea and serves time in prison, he would then be deported to Costa Rica, which has agreed to accept him as a refugee or a resident. They say if he didn't take the deal, he'd be deported to Uganda.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas for that report. Staying on this story, our next guest is Congressman Glenn Ivey, the representative from Maryland's 4th Congressional District. Notably, that district is the Maryland district in which Kilmar Abrego Garcia and his family reside. Congressman Ivey, thank you so much for your time. I would imagine it's a very busy time for you right now. You met with Mr. Abrego Garcia for the first time today. How did that meeting go? And what do you know about how long he'll be protected from deportation?
Well, it was very brief. We only had a chance to have a conversation before the vigil was really underway, and I was called up to speak. I've had a chance to interact with his wife and his family a great deal, but as you can imagine, he's under a great deal of strain. In fact, he sort of choked up a little bit during his comments when he was speaking. And I know his family's been under a lot of pressure. When the Department of Justice puts its full weight on you, it's a heavy burden to carry. So and I know he's concerned now too. He's at risk of being deported to Uganda. The Homeland Security people are trying to do it without giving him the day in court that the Supreme Court said he should have. So that's a challenge for him as well.
And today, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted on social media that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an MS-13 gang member, human trafficker, serial domestic abuser, and child predator. He denies these allegations. Does Secretary Noem's description match what you know about him?
Well, you know, she's great at throwing these allegations out, at press conferences, but she never shows up and says it under oath in court. And when these cases have come before a judge, like the one in Tennessee, the judge looked at the evidence in this case and said, I think that you're not a threat to public safety and you're not a flight risk. I'm going to let you go home to Maryland. That doesn't sound like all of those things that she just described. So at the end of the day, though, it doesn't matter what she says or what I say or whoever. It should be up to a judge and a jury. Under the Constitution, you get a right to a jury trial if you're charged with these crimes. The Trump administration brought these crimes. They should either prove them in court or let him go. Put up or shut up. It's time to get it done.
And this has been such a long legal fight for this family. You're a former prosecutor. What are the legal actions the government can take in this case?
Yeah, I prosecuted MS-13 as a matter of fact. And as you just heard a moment ago in one of your lead-up stories, we would indict them, prosecute them, convict them, and then when they were sentenced, we'd send them to jail and they'd serve out their jail sentence. Then we would deport them. We never deported people before they faced justice here in the United States because you don't know what's going to happen when you send them out. So they charged them with these crimes. They said they could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's time to do it. Now, there's a track where they can try and deport them for sure. And, obviously there's a lawsuit that's been filed already by Kilmar's lawyers in court to try and block that. And we'll see how that plays out. But, really, if you're going to charge them with the crimes, and the Trump administration did, they should have the guts to follow through with it and go through with it, take them to trial, let a judge and a jury decide, and live by the verdict that they render.
And as you know, Abrego's case has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. And while the court ordered the U.S. government to facilitate his return, it also enabled the administration's removals to other countries, as in this case in which the government seeks to remove Abrego Garcia to Uganda. And we also know now that the Trump administration is suing federal judges in Maryland after they stayed Abrego's deportation order. So as a member of Congress, is there anything that you can do to help him?
Yeah, we'll continue to fight as we've done here, but really the main fight's in court, and it should be. And the Supreme Court and the Fourth Circuit, the lower court below them, said, under the Constitution, they get their day in court. Due process requires that. That's the reason the Supreme Court said he should be brought back. And in this instance, he's already under the supervision of the federal judge who's got the criminal charges in front of him. So that judge is managing how he's behaving while he's on release. He's not a threat to the public, according to that judge who made a decision on the record and according to the law. So we don't have a problem here of him being some kind of public threat because you got a judge in Tennessee that said he's not. Let him stay here. Let him have his day in court. Let him proceed on that path. On the immigration front, if you want to give him a hearing on that front too, instead of just trying to deport him before he has a chance to go to court, I'd be okay with that. But stop trying to duck the judges, stop trying to duck the juries, put up the evidence or shut up and let the case go forward one way or the other.
As you said, the Constitution guarantees due process really to anyone physically present here in the U.S. Congressman Glenn Ivey, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
A massive explosion led to devastation in a neighborhood just north of St. Louis. The explosion erupted in one home. Look at that damage there, setting others nearby on fire, damaging more than 20 properties. Tonight, the investigation into what caused that initial blast. Here's our Mola Lengi.
Tonight, a neighborhood in St. Louis County rocked by a massive home explosion. One home erupting, catching two nearby homes on fire. The fire continuing to spread.
Upon arrival on scene, we had 5 buildings that were on fire.
Multiple houses leveled, more than 20 others damaged. Shortly after 9 a.m., firefighters racing to the scene in Florissant. The fire still cracking and popping as they tried to get it under control. Smoke billowing into the sky, a car engulfed in flames. The interior of this home charred down to its frame. Bricks and 2x4s scattered across the area. At least 3 people injured. Remarkably, no one killed.
You can look at this carnage And the fact that no one was killed is an absolute blessing.
Officials asking residents to stay away as they assess the damage.
If there's extensive damage in these homes, people will not be able to go back in there. It's just too dangerous at this time.
Our thanks to Mola Lengi. Now to the Jeffrey Epstein case, and new reaction tonight from the family of one of Epstein's most vocal accusers after the Justice Department released audio of its interview with convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katursky with the story.
Tonight, the anguished family of Jeffrey Epstein's most vocal accuser says the Justice Department's, quote, bizarre interview of Epstein's accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell gave her a platform to rewrite history. The family of Virginia Giuffre furious after DOJ released audio and transcripts of Maxwell's 9-hour sit-down with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who used to be President Trump's personal lawyer. In the interview, Maxwell, who was serving 20 years for sex trafficking, proclaimed her innocence, insisted she didn't witness any inappropriate behavior by any of Epstein's powerful friends, and said a long-rumored list of Epstein's high-profile clients does not exist.
There's no list. There's never been a list.
And you never heard Mr. Epstein talk about such a list?
Never.
Maxwell was also asked about President Trump, who had a decade-long friendship with Epstein before their falling out.
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
But she also contradicted Trump's claim former President Bill Clinton went to Epstein's private island 20 times.
You're not aware of President Clinton ever going to the island?
He never, absolutely never went, and I can be sure of that because there's no way he would have gone. Well, I don't believe there's any way that he would have gone to the island had I not been there, because I don't believe he had an independent friendship, if you will, with Epstein.
At the outset of the interview, the Deputy Attorney General telling Maxwell she shouldn't expect to be rewarded.
By you meeting with us today, we're really just meeting. I'm not promising to do anything. I'm not promising to ask Judge Nathan or any of the judges that's been assigned to your case to do anything. We're just talking.
But Democratic Senator Adam Schiff says that just doesn't wash.
So she wants a pardon. She says exactly what her lawyers tell her is going to be necessary to get a pardon.
Shortly after the interview, in a highly unusual move, the Justice Department transferred Maxwell to a minimum security prison camp. Tonight, Virginia Giuffre's family says that sends a disturbing message that child sex trafficking is acceptable and will be rewarded.
Aaron Katursky reporting tonight. The Department of Health and Human Services confirmed the first human case of a flesh-eating screwworm parasite. The patient, a Maryland resident, was diagnosed with the parasite shortly after returning from El Salvador. The parasite is a type of fly that feeds on live tissue, generally livestock. Officials say the risk to the public is very low, but the USDA says the screwworm is a threat to our food supply. Coming up here on Prime, as millions of families settle back into school routines, let's talk about bedtimes. Is your child getting enough sleep? Plus, we ask an expert to weigh in. Should schools really be starting later? Also coming up, a Grammy-winning rapper in court charged with attacking police after his bizarre arrest. Many families are getting ready to make that back-to-school transition if they haven't already. And by that, we mean back on track with school schedules like earlier bedtimes. So just how much sleep should your kids at home be getting? Let's break it down in tonight's By the Numbers to see how your household stacks up. Preschoolers ages 3 to 5 should be getting 10 to 13 hours of sleep for optimal health. And that includes naps, according to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. School-aged children ages 6 to 12 should be getting between 9 to 12 hours of sleep. And when it comes to teenagers, experts say they should be getting up to 10 hours of sleep. 8 at the very minimum. But did you know 7 out of 10 high schoolers, 70%, are not getting enough sleep? That's according to the American Academy of Family Physicians. And let's take into account school start times. 8 a.m. is the average start time for U.S. public high schools. That's despite in 2014, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out and said middle and high schools should not begin earlier than 8:30 in the morning, citing mounting evidence that later start times were better for learning and well-being. Let's bring in pediatrician Dr. Isla Wegman with Hassenfeld Children's Hospital at NYU Langone. Doctor, gosh, just listening to that, I mean, I need that preschool sleep. The 10 to 13 hours sounds like a dream. But I have two sons. I feel like we're going to go through this. It always, every single summer, every year, as we're getting ready for back to school, it takes them a few days to get adjusted, to get to sleep at a reasonable time. I mean, we put them to bed, but they stall, they delay. What is the most effective way to get kids ready for back to school?
So we really have to reset the circadian rhythm. It's so important that we do this gradually and not abruptly. And so what I like to recommend to my patients is the week before we enter into school, each day we'll try to go to sleep 15 minutes earlier and wake 15 minutes earlier as well. And if we gradually readjust, it's not as abrupt as a shift as you would normally see if you were to go 0 to 60.
So don't let them sleep in, basically. Like, put them to bed at an earlier time and then get them up as if they're going to school the next day.
15-minute increments is really what I recommend.
Okay, noted. All right, so let's talk about what some states are doing. California passed a law in 2019 saying that high schools could start no earlier than 8:30 in the morning. Florida is doing the same starting next year, all to align with scientific evidence apparently on adolescent sleep patterns. Is this a conversation more states should be having for the sake of students?
I think so. And, you know, the literature and the data really shows that those later school times actually prevent injury. So we see that for children that are going to school at a more reasonable hour, around 8:30 or later, they're less likely to get into car accidents. We see that adolescents in general have higher mental clarity and focus. They're able to reduce their cortisol levels, which are their stress hormones that tend to rev up if we're not getting enough sleep. So there's so much research and so much data that points towards the later school times for significant benefit for our adolescents.
So let's talk about the blue light effect. We've heard so much about it, how it affects adults right before they go to sleep, but there are kids that are inseparable from their devices.
Oh, yes,
so what's the best way for parents to handle this, especially at bedtime?
So I think it's really important to power down a full hour before we go to sleep, and reducing the sort of natural ambient light that we get in the room is critical for that. So I like dimming the lights gradually. I also really recommend powering down from those devices at least an hour before we go to sleep in order for our natural sleep hormone, our melatonin, to really rev up and do its job.
That is a reminder that I needed. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming in, Dr. Isla Wegman. Absolutely. All right, coming up here on Prime, how President Trump's tariffs are expected to impact businesses along the U.S.-Mexico border. Plus, Michael Jordan and the late Kobe Bryant, how two of basketball's greatest are setting a new world record. Welcome back. President Trump has threatened products made in Mexico with a blanket 30% tariff, but paused implementation last month to allow time for the two countries to come to an agreement. For one South Texas county, where a third of the population lives in poverty, trade with Mexico isn't merely a political issue, but one of survival. Cross-border trade, after all, means crucial jobs and often lower prices. Our Mireya Villarreal reports from Stark County, Texas.
It's a small little town where everybody knows each other. It's really a nice place to live, and the taxes are cheap.
Texas Cafe is a historical landmark.
They nominated our restaurant for something called Texas Treasure. Basically what it is they honor businesses that have been in existence for 50 years or more with the same owners and in the same location.
A Tex-Mex restaurant less than a mile from the Mexican border that's been serving Rio Grande City for 85 years.
I'm trying to get everything organized for an event that we have tonight.
The American dream for Becky Garza's grandfather, who came here from Mexico almost a century ago.
My grandfather used to work at the fort, at the mess hall. They used to call them the cooks, the chefs, and he did that for many years. And then he opened the restaurant here. He rented this place. It was rent to own. I think it was like maybe $1.25 a month or something like that.
Wow.
We found the records. That is why we became the Texas Treasure, actually. And finally, when he purchased it, there was no difference. You know, people, I think what makes a business is the community, the camaraderie of the people in the community working together. I don't know. That was back in 1939. It was what, a little bit after the Depression?
Yeah. This is the kind of place where the latest news and town gossip unfolds between sips of coffee and spoonfuls of pozole. Becky knows almost everyone that walks through the door, floating between her role as a boss and confidant.
There's a lot of people that work really hard because things are changing. Things are changing a lot.
What do you mean by that?
The economy. The economy is just driving, I think, everybody crazy. I buy a box of eggs, so I think it's 15 dozens, and they used to be, and I used to complain, my dad, when they would go up to like $10. Now they're $20 a box.
This community is one of just 2 big cities in Stark County, a small county of less than 75,000 people. Here, immigration is important, but it's not the biggest issue.
When I get together with friends, we have to go to the grocery store, we have to make our list. And yes, of course, the list is, of course, evident. We have to make one. But the list now is like shorter because we can't afford this one right now. We'll do it this next month and this kind of stuff. That's what I have to do at the restaurant too.
In a county where the median income is nearly $36,000 and about 33% of people live in poverty, it's not about red or blue. It's about survival.
If things don't get better, I might have to either cut staff, cut hours. I'm going to start with cutting hours and then maybe cut the menu, to keep the place open. Because I don't want to lose my customers. I don't.
Do you think everybody's making those hard decisions here?
Yes, I think so. There's a lot of people making those kind of decisions. There maybe it's not the same decision that I'm making, but there's something else that's going to affect them in a different way.
Rio Grande City is one of many border towns that relies on a healthy binational relationship with America's big economic neighbor to the south, Mexico. Case in point, the Camargo Bridge, one of the biggest lifelines running through this town. It's a privately owned port of entry facilitating hundreds of millions of dollars in trade with Mexico every year, attracting more businesses and jobs to the region.
And it's really a bridge that puts 2 different economies in lockstep with each other. We can't work without the Mexican government, and they can't work without the U.S. government.
A few months ago, a bipartisan group of politicians came together to sign new legislation allowing the Vail family to expand the port.
You see that?
Oh yeah, you have it runs a full gamut here.
Yeah, and you do. It's like a Swiss watch.
Yeah, so that's the one with the double, and they'll go back and get a double load then.
Yes.
And most bridges can't do that.
No, but we designed for it.
Yeah.
We have 2 lanes right now, and we're authorized to have 14 lanes. Now we have 65 years to build the rest of the port out.
But threats of tariffs or a border shutdown could severely impact this entire community.
Our thanks to Mireya Villarreal for that report. Coming up here on Prime, actor and producer Andre Holland is here to discuss his latest film, Love, Brooklyn, a deep look at modern romance. But have you heard about the new record set for the most expensive sports card? We'll tell you about it. That's coming up next. Welcome back. Let's take a look at what you may have missed in the world of sports. A basketball card signed by NBA Hall of Famers Michael Jordan and the late Kobe Bryant was sold for nearly $13 million. That's a new world record. An anonymous bidder paid an astonishing $12.9 million at auction. The previous record was held by a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card, which sold for $12.6 million in 2022. A shocking upset this afternoon at the U.S. Open. 6-seed Madison Keys lost to 82nd seed Renata Zarazua in an uncharacteristic match from the Australian Open champion. Keys conceded 14 double faults during the match, becoming the first American top 10 seed to lose in the Open's first round in the last 30 years. And after 12 years without a victory, golfer Tommy Fleetwood hoisted his first ever PGA Tour Championship trophy. The 34-year-old Englishman finished 3 strokes ahead of his closest competitors Sunday, taking home the FedEx Cup and $10 million. After his winning birdie putt, Fleetwood hugged his caddy and embraced his stepson, soaking in the glory of victory for the first time. Grammy-winning rapper Lil Nas X charged after his bizarre arrest. A massive theft ring targeting LA's wealthiest busted by police. And the craze over K-pop demon hunters gives streaming giant Netflix its first box office win ever. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. Grammy-winning rapper Lil Nas X was arraigned today on 4 felony charges, including assaulting police. He pleaded not guilty. Police say the 26-year-old Old Town Road rapper, whose real name is Montero Hill, was spotted last week wandering around Los Angeles, naked and incoherent. He allegedly charged at officers when they confronted him. Bail was set at $75,000, and he was ordered to attend 4 Narcotics Anonymous meetings a week or attend outpatient treatment. ABC News has reached out to reps for Lil Nas X for comment. Alabama has reported its first case of measles in the state since 2002. According to the state, the infected person is an unvaccinated child under the age of 5 who became infected when traveling outside of the U.S. The child's siblings are vaccinated and have not had any symptoms of measles. Health officials are encouraging the public to make sure they are up to date on their shots.
These are not crimes of need. These are crimes of greed.
Authorities have busted up a massive burglary ring in Southern California. Los Angeles police say 8 suspects from the Rich Roland crew were arrested following a coordinated effort in multiple cities. The crew allegedly targeted 92 homes dating back to 2022, targeting wealthy areas but not celebrities. Authorities recovered weapons, ammunition, money counters, and stolen property. A record-setting drug seizure for the U.S. Coast Guard in what's being hailed as the agency's largest. Officials in Port Everglades, Florida, offloaded more than 76,000 pounds of cocaine from 19 seizures since June. The Coast Guard says the drugs have a street value of some $473 million. In business news, less than a decade after Keurig and Dr. Pepper merged, the company says it will now buy the owner of Peet's Coffee for $18 billion. The company will then divide itself into 2 companies, one selling coffee and the other selling cold drinks like Snapple, Dr. Pepper, and energy drinks. Keurig, Dr. Pepper's CEO, says dividing the company will help the businesses be more nimble. Netflix appears to have its first box office win in the streaming company's 18-year history, thanks to K-pop Demon Hunters. The film about a K-pop superstar trio who double as demon hunters topped the box office with an estimated $16 to $18 million in ticket sales, according to studio estimates. The Netflix film was only in theaters over the weekend, now moving to its streaming home. Shining a light on love, loss, and friendship with intimacy and thoughtfulness. Love Brooklyn follows the story of Roger, a writer navigating complicated relationships with his ex and his current lover as he relies on the support of his best friend. It's a modern romance set against the backdrop of a Brooklyn that's changing just as quickly as the people who call it home. Let's take a look.
Communication, we had our time, but it just didn't work out for us. We were just hanging out.
Well, what if it came up? You two getting back together, what would you do?
It won't come up.
But what if it did?
Oh, I want to see more. Joining us now is the star of Love Brooklyn, actor and producer Andre Holland. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So in Love Brooklyn, you play, of course, Roger, a writer who's really juggling love, friendship, your own creative endeavors. So how was it bringing Roger to life?
It was amazing. It was amazing. One of the things I really wanted to do, and that really excited me about the movie, is that it felt like a real contemporary love story for our time, for this time. And as a Brooklyn resident myself, I got to shoot a lot of it right in my own backyard, which was amazing. And then, inviting a bunch of my friends to join me on the journey, like Nicole Bahari and DeWanda Wise and Roy Wood Jr. and the whole cast, it really was a wonderful experience.
And from what I understand, you guys have been friends for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how was that? I'm sure that had to have an influence on the chemistry on screen, knowing each other so well.
Absolutely. So Nicole Bahari and I go back to drama school days. I went to NYU, And when I was in school, she was at Juilliard. DeWanda and I also went to NYU together. Cassandra Freeman, who's in it, is an NYU friend. So the chemistry was like instant as soon as we got on set.
Of course. I love that you all have stayed connected over the years. So you've mentioned that you don't often see Black people in these small love stories. So why was it important for you to bring that perspective to the screen?
Well, for me personally, I love those movies. Those old, like, 90s, like rom-coms, the When Harry Met Sally's and, Love Actually and You've Got Mail.
Classics.
And all of those movies. And then there was a moment where, like, Black folks were in those movies, like Love Jones and Love and Basketball and all these other great movies. And even going back further than that to, like, Claudine and some of the older ones. I wanted to make something that felt like in that lineage, I see myself as a person who, I'm a very romantic person myself by nature, and I wanted to dive into a story like this and to do it with friends. In a way, everybody got a chance to do something that they've longed to do, and it was a really, really special experience.
Yeah, it seems as though there was a need for this. This is what they were missing.
Yeah.
And not only are you a lead actor in this film, but you're also a lead producer. So how was that, balancing both roles? That seems like a lot.
Hard. Yeah, that was hard. A lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But I had wonderful support. My production company Harper Road we have a great team in place, and I think all of us felt like, we're in a moment where I think the world could use a bit of love, and I think people really want to see movies, particularly movies with Black leads, where we're not relying on like trauma or, violence, but like we're just watching these people try and move their lives forward in these small, incremental ways, And this is the kind of movie I think that you could go out to have like a date night. You could bring your group of girlfriends or guy friends or whatever and just go in and really enjoy yourself and then have a lot to talk about on the other side of it.
It's like a feel-good movie.
Yeah.
Those are the vibes I'm getting from it.
That's what we wanted to do. A feel-good, vibey, sexy movie with great music and beautiful folks and, some interesting things to think about.
And a really neat backdrop as well. You live in New York City, and over the years, New York City and Brooklyn, they've changed so much over the last couple of years. Now, Love Brooklyn is set in a historic place, historic city that's also changing. So how important was it for you to capture the true essence of Brooklyn in this film?
Well, I think it was so important. I live in Bed-Stuy, which is a neighborhood that's, gentrifying at light speed, but it's such an amazing community of folks there.
That's fantastic. Really looking forward to the film.
Thank you.
And we know it was a big hit at the Sundance Film Festival this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cannot wait to watch. Andre, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time. Love Brooklyn opens in New York on August 29th and in theaters nationwide September 5th. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us.